Welcome back. Well, you have heard a lot about the Green New Deal. It seems to be the left's new big idea. It turns out that it comes with an equally really big bill. According to a study by the American Action Forum, the plan to combat climate change and tackle income inequality will set back taxpayers $93 trillion. That is $600,000 per household. Joining me right now is the co-author behind that study. He is American Action Forum president and former CBO director, Douglas Holtz-Eakin. And Doug, it is always a pleasure to see you. Thanks for joining us this weekend.
Thanks for having me on.
So I think your report, this study, really made a lot of waves because people knew that it was going to be super expensive, but $94 trillion? Wow. Doug, how did you arrive at such a price tag?
Well, we went through the 14-page proposal and pulled out the things that we could realistically get some idea of the cost. So, for example, one of the proposals is to have an electricity grid entirely driven by renewables. We know what it costs to construct a megawatt of solar, a megawatt of wind. We know what storage is required and how much that costs. You put it all together, you get $5.4 trillion. Similarly, we've had experience with high-speed rail. California, we know what it costs per mile, so you can sort of get an estimate of that. We've seen universal health proposals, so $36 trillion for that. And some of them, quite frankly, we had to sort of get ranges with because it's hard to figure out. So there's a proposal in there for guaranteed jobs. Those jobs are quite good jobs. They have a standard of living which is adequate for a family. They come with paid family leave, retirement benefits. One way to think about it is, okay, everyone who's unemployed gets that job, and that's the low end. That's a $6 trillion price tag. Or you could imagine that more people come into the labor force because those jobs are out there, and you have to raise the wages of some people already working because they don't have a job that good. You put that all together, you end up at $44 trillion. So it's possible to go through, look at the proposals, think about their implications, and get at least a ballpark estimate. I don't want to overstate the precision. There's not a lot of detail in the proposals, and we did the best we could with what we had.
Well, look, I'm going to get to the debt that we face currently in a minute, but how are we talking about something that costs so much when we know that there's no money to do it and it's only going to mean raising taxes significantly? I mean, am I wrong on that?
I don't think you're wrong about that. The way I think about it might not be right, is that these goals, clean environment, people having health insurance, people having a job, are things Americans support. The country as a whole wants that to happen. So the real question is this the best way to make progress on those goals? And that's the point of doing a study like this. Let's find out what these proposals cost. Are they something that people really want to sign on to? They look at a price tag and they might think, gee, maybe not. Maybe there's another way to do this, and thus make the decision to sort of pursue other avenues toward full employment, universal coverage, whatever it might be.
Yeah. What gets me is that we're hearing all of these proposals, whether it's Medicare for All, which wipes out the private insurance industry completely, another big federal program, Green Deal, another huge federal program. But when we hear these things, we're not actually hearing the details of the cost, the details of what it means. I mean, it all sounds great. We would love to know that we're not using fossil fuels and we've got a very clean environment. We would love to know that everybody has health care. But when you dig deeper, you recognize that these are just nonsensical ideas. I just wish when people would announce the ideas, they would also bring the details around them so that people can understand this doesn't make economic sense.
Well, you're preaching to the choir. I've always believed that you need to know the numbers, because if you take the time to put pen and paste on paper and figure out what something costs, you genuinely understand what the proposal is. If you just say, hey, we like a clean environment, you're like, oh, fine, that's a good thing. But when you say, we'd like to have something that runs entirely on wind and solar, geez, the wind doesn't always blow, the sun does go down. That means we need storage. Storage is really expensive and hard. You start to get to the real cost of things, and you think about it a little bit differently. That's an important step.
So again, the sun and the wind, they're great, and you can use them in certain things. Like I love my solar lights in my backyard, but that's not going to fly a plane. That's not going to get me from point to point on a train. So this whole idea that we're just going to give up airplanes and trains, again, nonsensical. Doug, you're a numbers guy. Let me bring another number to you, and that is $22 trillion. You know where I'm going. We have a record debt. Doug, you've spent years of your life dealing with this and looking at solutions. I know the growth in spending is in the entitlement, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. How are we going to get our arms on $22 trillion in debt? And how come markets don't care about this?
On the latter, I'm really quite surprised at how calm markets are about the outlook. I mean, the U.S. federal outlook is unsustainable. The federal government is the most systemically important financial institution, and it's in bad shape. Within about 8 years, we're going to have interest on federal debt being the third largest program in the federal budget, larger than the Pentagon, larger than education, name it. That's a really scary picture, and markets are quiescent. And I'm not sure I fully understand that. But you're right. The only way to deal with this is to take a look at what you spend and what you raise and recognize that they are way out of whack. The really big growth numbers are on the spending side. Over the next 10 years, Social Security, for example, is projected to grow at about 8% a year. We're not going to get 8% growth in the economy. You know that. I know that.
Yeah.
So revenues aren't going to grow at 8%, so you're going to have to deal with that. And I think it's important to recognize that the beneficiaries of the Social Security program have a big stake in reform, because if nothing is done, they all get cut by 25% across the board under 15 years.
Yeah.
That's a horrible way to run a retirement program. We got to fix it.
Yeah, we had Maya McGinnis on from the Committee for Responsible Federal Budget, who said we're talking about interest payments exceeding some of the more important things that we need to spend on, like defense spending, like other things. I mean, just because rates are going higher. So this is something we will certainly watch. Doug, it's good to see you this weekend. Thank you.